Good evening. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. It's wonderful to have you here in the sanctuary. And welcome to all of you, Bruchim Habaim, who are watching the live stream at home. I'm Rabbi Matt Berger. I'm joined on the bima with our soloist, Allison Rosoff, and down at our piano, Joy Katzen-Guthrie. I'll invite you to sing and join us in the English and the Hebrew in all the prayers, whether you're using Mishkan Tefillah, the actual physical prayer book, or you're following along with the screen, either here or at home. We're going to begin on page 13 in our prayer books, and here you'll find the words to Psalm 96. Yismehu hashamayim, let the heavens rejoice and the earth exult. Yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai mai 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 mai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai mai 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 mai, yismehu hashamayim, Itagel haaretz, Yiram hayam, umelo, Yismechu hashamayim, Vitagel haaretz, Yiram hayam, umelo, Yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai mai 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 mai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai, yamamai mai mamai mai 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 mai, Yismehu hashamayim, Vitagel haaretz, Yiram hayam, umelo. We'll get into the spirit of lighting the Shabbat candles by singing Debbie Friedman's Light These Lights. Prayer books, you'll find the blessing for the lighting the Shabbat candles on page 2.
La
Before we continue with our next song and prayer, Lecha Dodi, which you can find on 20 and 21, let's offer a special prayer of peace for the Ukraine and for peace throughout the world. God, spread your shelter of peace, your Sukkot Shlomecha, over Ukraine. Guard the soldiers, guard the families whose lives continue to be uprooted due to this conflict. May their homes, their bodies, and their well-being be protected and safe. We say, Baruch atah Adonai Shomea Tefillah. We bless you, God, who hears our prayers for shalom, our prayers for peace. For Lecha Dodi, we're going to be singing Come My Beloved, verse 1, 2, 5, and then verse 9. When we get to our final verse, Bo'ii v'shalom, where we ask the Shabbat Kala, the bride, to come in peace, I'll invite all of you to stand up and face one of the doorways to symbolically greet the presence of Shabbat.
Dodi likrat kala, Nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el hameyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shemo tiferet v'nidila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki himchor haberacha, Nerosh mikedem nisucha, Sof maaseh b'mat Shabbat hilah. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri, Ki va'orek u'mi uri, shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alayik nigla. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat.
Let's rise and greet the bride.
Bo'ii v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha u'tzola, Toch emunei hamsegula, Bo'ii chala, Bo'ii chala. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi likrat kala,
B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Feel free to be seated. our segue to Shema and its blessings, found on page 26, the half or Chatzi Kaddish, words of praise.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba Milmad ivrach yutei v'yamlich malchutei Mechayechon uvyomechon uvchayir dekol beit Yisrael Bagala bagala uvizman kariv v'yimaru amen Yesh Rabba mevarach lehalam lameyamaya yitbarach yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yiromam v'yidnasei v'yidhadar v'yidaleh v'yidalal shmei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata Dus bechata v'nechemata Tamiram b'ama v'yimaru amen.
Let's rise for the Baruch, our call to prayer.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vahem.
Praise Adonai,
the Holy One.
praise Adonai,
the Holy One. Baruch Hu et Adonai. Praise Adonai, the Holy One. Praise Adonai, the Holy One. Praise Adonai.
Please join me with a prayer for creation, Ma'ariv Aravim, found on page 31. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. And words of love, Ahavat Olam, found on the middle of 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll sing Open Up Our Eyes.
Teach us how to live. Fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. Open up our eyes. Teach us how to live.
Teach us how to live.
Fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. And we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malachuto Le'olam Va'ed.
Feel free to be seated. We'll continue chanting the words of the Shema, You Shall Love, V'ahavta, found on page 36. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha, uv'chol meodecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavcha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'beitecha, uflechtecha b'derech, u'shokbecha uvkumecha, u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha, u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha, leman tizkeru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, li'ot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Let's continue on page 39, words of truth and faith. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe that we are before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt. There is a better place, a promised land. But the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together as we continue with the song of freedom, Kamocha.
Micha
Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We'll continue now with a prayer for shelter and protection, the words of Hashkivenu, found on page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'shalom, L'shalom, V'hamidenu Shomereinu L'chaim. Ros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, Ros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us all from harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right.
Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukkot shalom, aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Let's rise now for the words of our standing prayers, the tefillah, which begin on page 46 and continue on even pages.
Adonai, sifatai tiftachu fi hilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekoneh Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevir geula livnei vneihem, Lema'an Shemo ve'yava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol, Atah rav lahoshia, Morid atal, Mechachel chaim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech nofim ve'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umechayehem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech memid umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'nemanata l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hakol.
Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'ho yom yalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Feel free to be seated. Blessings 4, 5, and 6 of the Tefillah begin with our prayer for Shabbat and its holiness, Kiddushat Hayom, Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat, and a prayer found on the bottom of 56 that God's presence will always be in Israel and with us wherever we are in the world. Baruch Atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion. And for gladness and words of thanksgiving, the Hoda'ah is found on 59. Baruch Atah Adonai Hatov Shimcha U'cha Na'eh Lechodot. And our seventh and final blessing is always for peace on Shabbat evening. Shalom Rav. Grant abundant peace to Israel, your people forever, for you are the sovereign God of all peace. May it be pleasing to you to bless your people Israel in every season and moment with your peace. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. And for our moments of reflection, we'll now hear these words, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Aron, lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech Aron, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'yinecha livarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol hein ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Let's take some moments now for a prayer for healing, Misha Berach, which you can find on the screens before you as well as on page 253, as we call to mind those in our community and beyond who are in need of strength and courage. We think of Peter Bauk, Yonatan Reuven Ben Rivka, Charlie Burke, Norma Bloomberg, Babs Brown, Manuel Cruz, Eddie Deerfield, Evelyn Edelman, Rob Edelman, Harry Fleisch, John Friedman, Denise Freifeld, Mitchell Freifeld, Sidel Freifeld, Leah Gottlieb, Arnold Miller, Melissa Miller, William Miller, Carl Nusanian, Theo Papadopoulos, Michael Ranzino, Abby Richmond, Bobby Rosenberg, Stephanie Ross, Dennis Schulman, Jeff Stark, Sharon Worster, and Sophia Young. If there are other names you'd like to add, feel free.
My father, George Stark. Mi shebeirach avotenu mikor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi shebeirach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
King Solomon's wisdom, we're taught, knows no bounds. It's one of the first things we learn about him. Countless legends attest to his keen intellect. In one of them, the Queen of Sheba tries to stump King Solomon by filling a room with fake wildflowers. It's Solomon's task to find the one single flower that was real within the sea of fake flowers. You know how he did it? He followed a bee. Pretty smart. With a pedigree like this, it should come to no surprise that people would travel from all over for an audience with Solomon, filling his days with intricate puzzlers and many brain teasers, but nothing got past him. In the book of Kings, Solomon is described in very positive terms. We're told that he, quote, loves God and walks in the statutes of David, his father. In short, he was a good Jew. Then one night, Solomon has a dream. God appears to him and says, "What wish shall I give you? Anything you want." Just imagine this. God grants him a single wish. Imagine if that happened to us. Solomon, for his part, didn't ask for great wealth, a longer life, the destruction of his enemies. Rather, Solomon said, "Give your servant a lev shomea, a listening heart, so I can discern between good and evil and govern the people well." God was very pleased with this response. So he blessed Solomon with the Lev Shomea, the listening heart, and he also made him even wealthier. But Solomon understood that through listening, we can gain a far deeper understanding of others, and that's a way to acquire true wisdom. It's a great teaching that shares a softer, more humble side of King Solomon. Back in college, I remember learning about a psychologist who was also a great listener. He was born in Germany in the turn of the 20th century. His name was Erich Fromm, who was raised as a traditional Jew. He was also a very gifted scholar, most likely influenced by one of his great-grandfathers, who was known to sit all day in his shop and study Talmud. It must have been slow-going business-wise in Frankfurt at the time. As a young adult, he became more secular, but Fromm joined a close-knit circle of Jewish intellectuals, which included theologians Franz Rosenzweig, as well as Martin Buber. Together, they joined and formed the Free Jewish School in Frankfurt in the 1920s. Free not because it didn't cost money, but because there were no restrictions on admission, which unfortunately for Jews was pretty common in Germany at the time. After earning a Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology in Heidelberg, Fromm became one of the leading psychologists of the day. He eventually fled the Nazi regime and went to the U.S. In a compilation of his many lectures that he called The Art of Listening, no short book at 400-plus pages, Fromm writes the following: "Listening is an art. Like the understanding of poetry, it requires complete concentration. Nothing important can be on the listener's mind. The listener needs to be able to express in words what's being heard. This requires empathy, the ability to feel the experience of others, which in turn allows us to love." Listening is also one of the more important concepts in Judaism, so much so that it's found in 2 weekly Torah portions in a row. Last week, we focused on the Shema, which is usually translated as, "Listen, Israel, the eternal is our God, the eternal is one." Yet a variation of the word Shema is also found in the very first verse of this week's portion. V'haya ekev tishmerun. It shall come to pass that if you surely listen to these commandments, to love God with all your heart and soul, you will be blessed. There are a whole lot of ways to translate the Hebrew word Shema. It can mean to hear, to understand, to pay attention to respond, and it can even mean to obey. And it's a recurring motif in Deuteronomy with its 3-letter root, shin, mem, and ayin, appearing in various forms 92 times in the book of Deuteronomy alone. So it's pretty clear the Torah is sending us a message about the importance of listening. Sir Jonathan Sacks, who is also a rabbi, he makes the case that the twin foundations of Western culture, ancient Greece and ancient Israel, differed specifically in this regard. He writes, Greece was a profoundly visual culture. We can see this in their approach to art, architecture, and sculpture. Both theatrical performances as well as the Olympic Games were feasts for the eyes. Contrast this, he says, with Israel, a religious faith based on a God we cannot see and who can't be represented in any visual form. In fact, even our most direct encounter with God at Mount Sinai was all about listening, because Moses tells us the Israelites heard the sound of God's words but saw no image. There was only a voice. What's interesting is that in colloquial speech, we frequently flip the usage of vision and hearing. I'm sure most of us have heard the expression, seeing is believing. When we want to express that we understand something, we say, I see, rather than I hear. And if we want to explain something more deeply, we might shed light on a subject or offer an insight or observation. Listening is used as a metaphor for understanding throughout rabbinic literature as well. In the Talmud, virtually every reference to hearing, learning, and paying attention is based on the Hebrew word shema. I'll just give you 3 examples. All of them are in Aramaic, but I'll give you the translation after each one, and I'll ask you to listen closely to the variations of the word shema in each of them. There's ta shema, which means come and hear. Then there's lo shmaya le, which means it was heard. And finally, there's shmeta, which means a teaching, which, by the way, has no relation to the Yiddish word shmata, which means rag. Kind of like the shmata that I use for my eyeglasses. Listening is also the foundation of every relationship. When we listen to friends, colleagues, loved ones, we're telling them that they're worthy of our time and respect. Listening lets other people know that we're present and that we're sharing a moment together. All of us have an innate desire and need to be heard and listened to. It's how we know others are with us and standing by us. Moreover, from a spiritual standpoint, listening is also a wonderful way to nourish our soul. Good spouses and partners listen to one another. Good parents listen to their kids. Good grandparents, aunts, and uncles listen to their grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. Good friends listen to each other. Good employers listen to their employees as well as their customers. And finally, good leaders listen to those they lead. Lives can be changed for the better by listening. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to agree with every single thing that we hear, far from it, but it does mean we need to care enough to actually listen. And when we do, then we'll know that the words and meaning of the Shema in all of its forms have touched our hearts. The idea that Judaism is a religion of listening is also reflected in our tradition's long and storied history of telling tales. Penina Shram, a master storyteller, shares the following: there's just no substitute for the human voice telling a story directly, with people looking at one another, listening to each other. It's through the senses that one recalls emotions. And it's through emotions that we act in concert with our own group and integrate the aspirations of individuals with the ideals of their community. Now, growing up, Penina was the daughter of a synagogue cantor in Connecticut. And her father loved to recount stories of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, as well as other biblical heroes. And her mother was an enthusiast of all things Yiddish, who taught Penina how to become a mensch, a good human being, through the telling and retelling of stories and proverbs. Shram and a friend started a theater called Theater a la carte in New York in the 60s, which produced adult and children's plays. Then in 1970, she started to record books for the blind at the Jewish Braille Institute. And in 1974, she became the storyteller in residence at the New York Jewish Museum, all the while teaching for about 45 years at Yeshiva University's Stern College for Women. One of her singular stories, her signature stories, and one of my favorites, it's also found in the PJ Library as well, is called The Apple Tree's Discovery. It's about a little apple tree that sits in a forest of oaks and begs God for stars like those that were glimmering among the branches of the tall, great oak trees beside her. God looks at the little apple tree and says, "Be patient, have savlanut. You'll see." When the seasons change from winter to spring, beautiful white blossoms grew on the apple tree's branches. Still, the apple tree was unhappy because she wanted stars. Once again, God told her, "Be patient, little apple tree." Spring then gave way to summer, and in the fall, when the apples were fully ripe, a strong wind began to blow. The uppermost branches of the tree began to sway in the breeze, and then all of a sudden, the top apples began falling to the ground where they split open. And God said, "Look, little apple tree." And in the middle of each apple, as you'll see right here on the screen, the middle of the big apple had seeds that are shaped like a star. And God said, "Look, you had these stars all along, you just didn't know it." All of us are blessed with many gifts, the ability to see, to hear, to touch, to feel, to taste. Long ago, King Solomon understood that one of our greatest gifts is the ability to listen to those around us. When God asked him for a single wish, Solomon asked for a lev shomeah, a listening heart. Why? Because listening can do wonders. And listening can also lead to wisdom, which is always a good thing. Shabbat shalom. We're going to continue with the words of Aleinu, the adoration found on page 282. I'll invite us to rise as the ark is opened.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, l'atיר gedula le'otzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam k'elkinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, ve'naknu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol ha'aretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Be seated. You'll find the words of Mourner's Kaddish, words of praise, on page 294 in your prayer books. As we call to mind and to heart families in the period of Shloshim, first 30 days mourning their loved one. As we remember at this time Stu Moravsky, father of Lisa Richmond, Jose Miguel Perez, brother-in-law of our own Alex Perez, Lois Silverberg, aunt of Denise Freifeld, as well as Simon Nemzow, uncle of Marcia Satinoff. On the Shabbat, we mark the yahrzeit anniversary of passing of loved ones, as we remember Min Bornstein, Joseph Brudney, Marvin Cohen, Jacob Epstein, Molly Felser, Harry Fishman, Greta Fleisch, Marvin Friedman, Norma Goldman, Lena Greenberg, Esther Hauer, Daniel Ippolito, Lee Itzkowitz, Myrna Klein, Harry Kleinberg, Elliot Lampert, Zachary Lampert, Aaron Lampert, Elaine Levine Maller, Max Marco, Isidore Masarski, Sydney Miller, Blanche Morris, Margaret Moskowitz, Jerry Noodleman, Evelyn Oprea, Harry Rosenstein, Oscar Ross, Judith Rosenberg, Eugene Rothenberg, Donald Rudolph, Harry Sabgier, Rose Turkle, Eva Tudelman, and Sender Washman, and excuse me for mispronouncing, it's Judith Rothenberg. Are there any other names to add, please? Thank you. We say Zichronam Livracham, in the memory of all these good people, continue to serve as a lasting blessing in our lives as we rise together to offer the words of Kaddish praise. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael, b'agalav v'zman kariv imru, amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ulamei almayah, Yit Barak v'yit Shabbat v'yit Ba'ar v'yit Ramam v'yit Naseh, v'yit Hadar v'yit Alev v'yit Halal Shemei Dekudesha B'rihu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yalma v'imru, amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'mramav, huya asei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the one who causes peace in the heavens cause peace to descend on us, Israel, and the world, to which we say, amen.
V'imiru, 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 amen. V'imiru, 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 amen.
Feel free to be seated. You'll find the words to Shabbat Kiddush blessing over the fruit of the vine on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri agafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, v'avahu v'ratzon inchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishi, ihu yom tehilah, l'mikra'e kodesh, zeher l'tziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'charta, v'yotanu kidasha, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'havahu ratzon, inaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-shabbat. Chaim to life. Please join us in the Motzi, blessing over the bread. Motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Motzi lechem min haaretz. Pleasure to call forward Bill Ross, representing the board and leadership of our congregation. He'll be sharing some Shabbat announcements.
Sisterhood's fundraiser has begun, a great way to wish someone a happy new year. Brotherhood's Rosh Hashanah fundraiser is underway also, and add your name onto the card to reach all of your friends. Please RSVP for Sisterhood's in-person Israel and Moroccan cooking program. It'll be on September 6th in Mahjong and Canasta on September 13th. Every family that registers online for religious school by opening day this Sunday will be entered in a raffle to win an iPad thanks to the Brotherhood. The Social Action Committee is having a voter registration drive this Sunday and from 10 until noon. Jewish Family and Children's Services Fall Food Drive continues through September. Information and links about these events can be found in the weekly happenings. And following the service, please join us for an onig in the social hall. Thank you.
All right, our closing song for today. This is an old Jeff Klepper and Dan Freelander arrangement of Lo Alecha. It's not your duty to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist to it. I know it's one of Allison's favorite songs. Sure. Lo alecha mlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor, lo alecha mlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor. Velo ata ben chorin leivatem mimena, velo ata ben chorin, velo ata ben chorin leivatem mimena, velo ata ben chorin. Lo alecha mlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor, lo alecha mlacha ligmor, lo alecha ligmor. Velo ata ben chorin leivatem mimena, velo ata ben chorin, velo ata ben chorin leivatem mimena, velo ata ben chorin. And we'll conclude as we've been doing with a prayer for our health and well-being. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al shmirat hanefesh, for the mitzvah and sacred obligation to protect our lives and the lives of those around us. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom from those watching the live stream, and Shabbat Shalom to all of you here. Please join us for a nice oneg in the social hall. Take care.